Are you having fear right now?
I'm not having, I think the thing is that, oh, sorry. The thing for me right now is just,
Oh, you're good.
Oh, you can have it.
No.
I don't need it.
Good.
No, seriously. I really don't. I think I like to see everything out in front. It's like with my schedule with the dancers, because I have 8 dancers, I originally had a sound designer, a costume designer, lighting designer, like everything, wardrobe, everything. So all these different elements, I needed all the schedule. I need to know who's coming what days, who is observing on these days, just so I even know how to frame the rehearsal period. So with this show, it's like, okay, it's like, yeah, there's a part of me that feels, I don't want to say defeated, but feels like kind of withering away in some way. It's just, everything's really cumbersome, but it's just good to be able to see it. It's like, okay, I need to know that the person that's covering me up weighs 200 pounds, so I know how to maneuver away from that person. But without knowing that, it's hard to really put those things into perspective. And I think that's been the hard thing this past week, of just like dealing with all these things. So we'll see. We'll see how it all plays out. And I just have to punch through something. Yeah, because it's not happening.
What's your tech schedule? Are both of you getting enough time to figure out these things? Because you're both, I feel like you're both gelling now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Well, I mean,
That's just a personal question.
yeah, I cannot be thankful enough for this artistic residency, because like the way in which, because like so much of what I have to do has to do with the context that I'm in.
Right.
I mean, obviously.
Right. Next week's Thanksgiving, not
Yeah.
December 1st.
Yeah, completely. And I'm really looking forward to those work light days, like Friday, Saturday,
Right.
and Sunday, because I feel like they'll be much more contemplative. Like we'll have our tech days where we'll actually be doing lights, and we'll actually be, but then we can step away from the stress of that, because it's
Right.
stressful, in a fun way, I'm sure. I have no doubt, but and be in the theater without like a lot of people watching, and just kind of see how things shift and change. Because I was feeling complete fear like 3 or 4 days ago before I came here, and I only had 2 more days of like what I considered to be my rehearsal time, even though there's obviously still more rehearsal time, but simply because it's like what I do has to do with practice, like practicing steps or moves or like a section or an improvised score or whatever, but it's like so much of it has to do with like building a level of familiarity with, I guess, with any performance really. There's certain things that I feel like I'm gonna have to just shoot from the hip with a little bit, but I also love that, like being out there and stepping off a cliff, because you can. It's like kind of how I like to make performances. So
I feel like that's this solo for me. If I separate the solo from the group work, I was trying to think about, okay, when I was at Purchase, when I was in comp class, I had this long to work on a solo or something. But the funny thing is I didn't really. Like, I would do something, I'd give myself a week, and I might rehearse it maybe 3 times. And I guess I've just been thinking over the past few weeks, during that undergrad time, everything felt like it was fully developed.
Right.
But it was only given a week.
Right.
And since then, maybe the year after I finished college, I felt like, okay, I'm developing work, but it would still be that same thing, a week, 2 weeks at the most on a solo. And here, I was like, you know what? I'm going to really dive in deep. I'm going to work on this all summer long. And I've been making versions of it in my mind. But the closer I get to it, the more it's like, okay, that feels stale, that feels old. And I think it has to be current for it to really read the way I might want it to read. It's just hard when I tend to work so much from a structured improvisatory way, and I'm trying to add more of the structure to the solo work for whatever reason. There's obviously muscle memory when you're rehearsing, even if it's improv, and I want to allow myself that freedom to move however I want to move. But I think for the other parties, like the lighting designer or the costume designer, I need to see, especially depending on what this costume winds up to be, I've been needing to work in the costume to see how it moves. Whereas before, like the piece I just did for Dance Now, I just said to myself, I want to put on my favorite clothes and button them the way I like to button my shirts, which is not straight streamlined. It's just, if I'm not looking, that's just what it is. And I felt great. I was like, I can't really feel bad about this performance because it's happening and it's done. And I feel like I'm putting all this pressure on this for some reason. Well, obviously, but I'm just trying to get
This is the big deal.
Yeah.
You know,
but why does it have to be a bigger
No.
deal than
No.
the show that happened before?
It doesn't.
Other than every show, you should always try and
Right.
yeah.
Make it everything it can be.
Yeah.
I love performers who are able to, like, you know, obviously they're practice, their discipline, but then they throw it all away.
Mm.
And it's like they're in the moment. And for me, like, I find success to be like, I've pushed the envelope, I've pushed the envelope, I've pushed the envelope, I've pushed the envelope, I push the envelope so much that I know what the envelope is, and then I can, like, supersede it on some level.
Mm.
And I feel like choreography or working with objects, it's your envelope, and I feel like I have that epiphanous moment when I can, like, break it, bust it apart, and be like, oh, that's what I just ripped into pieces.
Mm.
Like, this was not the thing I was trying to get at. Seeing it completely outside of itself is what I'm being very abstract in my language, but I don't quite know how to say what I'm trying to say otherwise. But
No, I hear what you're saying. It's just kind of like you, in that rehearsal setting or in that creative mode of rehearsal, whatever you want to call it or frame it, that's the time that you're really doing a lot of the investigating to a certain extent. It's like you're picking your colors or you're reading a book or something, but then you just separate it. Part of it's ingrained in what you're thinking, but once you're in the performance, if you want to use that word, whatever is in is in. It's not, you don't have to be stuck to all the process that came before it.
right.
So it's like maybe whatever bleeds through.
That's really, for this piece, I made a libretto,
Mm.
just like a completely written
Yeah.
version of the dance, and it's like the way in which I use language on some level parallels different psychologies that I use as like performance material through the piece, and as like gender in its usage shifts and changes, and sometimes even whether or not there's the presence of a pronoun or not, like parallels different aspects that I wanted to address in my piece in terms of how I'm like thinking about the work, and in terms of how I'm trying to get myself to inhabit a given moment. But it's like when I'm doing the performance, the last thing I want to be doing is reciting the libretto to myself in the head. It's like if I can let go of those things and let the libretto just be a means through which I could externalize my process so that I could basically see myself, which is basically what it was. And it's also become kind of this secondary manifestation of the dance that I'm happy with as its own piece of like written art form or whatever. But it's like, yeah, it's like it's really dangerous. It's like, my friend Jonathan remarked on something that Will Swanson said to him just before he stepped on stage. He was working with, well, it was a long time, Trisha Brown, dancer and choreographer, and they had done all of this like meticulous choreography that has like very subtle movements, and like they were about to go on stage, and Will was like, and just remember, the choreography is just a suggestion for the dance. And Jonathan was like, what? You know, because,
Ingrained every little detail.
Yeah, right,
Didn't need it.
yeah. inhabit it with vitality and
Right.
like liveness and be present. And the last thing you should be doing in performance is think of me as the choreographer, like with my cane, being like, you know.
No.
Are you using wigs?
I hope so.
What do you mean you hope so?
It's just
Suspension?
suspension and money. One of my grants fell through that I really was relying on to help pay for the set designer to manipulate the wigs so that they looked like clouds and like bushes at the same time, because clouds and bushes kind of look the same. But yeah, so that my
wigs.
I could get by on 7. I'm trying to see, like, I keep trying to draw it out and take one off and take one off. I saw some online this morning for $19.99, but the frustrating thing is online prices are never the same as they are in a store. So that's the next problem. Because the one that I have already, I know I paid more than $20 for. And I'd want them, the one I have is big, so I'd want them all to be big that you can, like, play with them and change them in some way, but I don't know. And then Dan started saying to me that because of Dan Skellick, my line designer, Dan's kind of like, he is kind of my compositional advisor or something, because he's one of the only people that gives me honest feedback.
Oh, great.
Juliana May today gave me great feedback, and I'd never had her come before today.
May.
Yeah, I'm all about May. You know. I've been a fan of hers for a good while, but in terms of like people in my inner circle, even the dancers,
Right.
I think sometimes they're hesitant to tell me when they don't like something, or if they don't think something works. But he'll let me know, and he's one of the people that watches my solos and tells me what's up, or that I can even feel comfortable moving in space and not like starting to dance full out and I go, oh yeah, and then it goes on from there. Like I'll just show him the whole thing. But he was saying because of the floor, if I use just partial white floor instead of all white or all black, then maybe some of the wig should be the opposite color. So we might play with that too.
Mm.
So it's just a lot to try and make work. I don't know how to make a small afro wig look like a cloud or like a bush without it just being like an afro wig on the stage. Yeah, or just like flying afro wigs. Which, might work. I don't want it to look perfect by any means.
Right.
I want it to have a certain element of absurdity to it, but I want it to somehow still be able to register in your imagination that that's what it is.
The wig or the clown?
I was just trying to figure out.
I know. I was like, I don't have an answer.
Yeah, no, it's just if it's
Right.
smaller than this table, it's harder to sculpt. So, even the one I wear had been sculpted in some fashion to kind of play with this 17th century Japanese look from a black perspective. So that's just a whole other angle that I have to try to dive into too. That's kind of a little fuzzy right now. So
Is it the wig that you're wearing in the photos that you're talking about? The big wig?
yeah, you can't tell from how I'm laying, but we had kind of sectioned off the first part of it, and it's actually a brown wig that we spray painted black, so it has more texture. And there's some like style to it, so it really falls in line with how some of the women's hair was looking in those images.
The Japanese image.
Yeah.
So you're using wigs in the solo?
Yeah, in the solo.
Is the group piece have props?
Not a one. No.
That's nice.
I got enough with the group piece.
Yeah, that's bear.
And is it just cops? I feel like
No.
it can't be.
No,
I feel like it
there's
can't
no.
be just
There's
claps.
lots of other. And it got pared back. I mean, there's things that I don't want to talk about because like I want them to be. Well, there's cups and there's plastic bags. I mean, because plastic bags are like in all my photos. So
That never even occurred to me. That's hilarious.
You could probably well see that, but like I'm struggling with right now. I had to do this somewhat self-involved thing of asking for my community to involve themselves in my art, which I love because it's both performative in that I'm like asking audience to begin to play a performative role by taking responsibility for their daily, potentially wasteful habit of throwing away disposable coffee cups, and think about that act of not throwing it away and holding on to it and washing it and drying it and then saving it for me and then transporting it unless I come and pick it up from them. And it's like, I was like, oh my God, is this so self-involved that I'm asking, you know, basically my community to make my set? But I was like caught in this logistic thing of starting to live in Tennessee.
Needing cups.
And needing cups. And so right now I don't know if I have enough cups, and so I'm going to be going around and collecting them out of the trash, which I did before because to get the installation down in the lobby set up, machine needed cups to work with, so I went and did that. And you know, I found a whole trash can of cups on like 14th Street in like 45 minutes. Yeah. So it's like if I go out for 3 hours, it's amazing. It's kind of a meditation. It's like collecting the cups and then washing them and then letting them dry and then cutting them up and then sewing them and like, you know, turning them into something that they already are. Like, I love that because that means that there's like already a kind of transformative element to what I'm working with, but it sure is like a lot of work and it's time consuming. But I mean, I'm not doing this for it to just be easy. The other challenge of it is that I haven't gotten to work with these costumes at all, and I'm doing things in them, presumably. Through the days. Maybe. I'm just gonna stand there and let the costume speak for itself.
Oh, what else about the two of you? You live in Tennessee most of your time, half of your time.
Well, I've just started this.
You've just started? Oh, I thought this was like part of your life always.
No, I've lived in New York for the last 8.5 years.
I don't know.
Yeah. And I was in Tennessee last summer for 3 months and have been there since May, but I've come to New York like 3 times. And now I'm going to try to give it a go and see what can happen, but it's like, it's really hard it's hard to make money there.
Right.
And what we're trying to do on this piece of land that I'm living at and trying to get a group of people to come together to like purchase and turn into an arts community, it's like there is going to be possibilities for us to like make money there, but you know,
time.
Who knows how long that's going to take. So, you know, it's a very tenuous situation. And I mean, we moved to New York almost at the same time.
Yeah.
It was 2000, right?
2000, yeah. I finished CT. Yeah, I've kind of been in a weird place because I moved here and then I left and went to Pittsburgh for a year and a half, then moved to England and San Francisco, then came back here. But and yeah, there's a whole chapter that no one knows where I quit dancing. But I don't know, I'm always on the fence with my Pittsburgh residency and being in New York as well. I've been trying to take my dancers who live in New York to Pittsburgh as much as possible.
To work there?
Yeah, to work there. We go back, we do a show or some kind of I have a residency there in January, and I just want to see how comfortable I can get them to feel with the city before I really make that switch, if I do make a switch. And then just try and figure out what my life would be, really. I think it's just kind of been a struggle these last 2 years, just making work. I mean, yeah, it's its own thing. So.
It is. Requires time and resources.
Yeah, I don't know if I would have gone to Tennessee if I wasn't a solo artist who was wanting to become like an installation performance artist. Like I don't. My process was heavily dependent on working with other performers, which it may be at some point, but for right now is not. I'm like, yeah, I mean that's a full batch of considerations. But I also think it's like you can gain a lot by leaving New York and coming back. I totally like there wasn't any real like association, but like one of the things that gave me a lot of like trust in myself and to like dispel the fear about like leaving New York and going off into my own was actually Deborah's history, because Deborah, after dancing with Cunningham and being part of the Judson hoo-ha, like went and lived in Vermont on a commune for 6 years, and you know had her child, and like also developed a lot of things that are very important to her performance practice. So to like look back at her history and be like, well, she did it, you know.
It's possible.
Yeah, it's totally possible.
Yeah, I mean, I see my friends in Pittsburgh, and they're doing extremely well for themselves. And they come up here for APAP and whatnot. But it's just, I don't know. I guess just have to figure that out, too. Yeah, it's like the solo life versus the choreographer in a company life, and figuring out which one, if anyone has to be any more important than the other, which one that might be. I think it's the next thing.
Well, and it's all a matter of just figuring out where you have the most potency.
Yeah.
You know, like, I mean, I'm sure you've been struggling with this in your process, but it sucks being a solo artist in a lot of ways, because, like, you don't ever get to see yourself. I mean, I never film myself. I hate what I look like on video, because I think so much of what I do is, like, in my face, and is in subtleties, and is in how my eyes shift in relationship to what I'm doing and stuff. It's like, gaining perspective as a solo artist it's hard.
Really difficult.
So it's like, but you also can't just be like, can't turn away from who you are. And I feel like that's how I'm most potent right now.
Yeah, I think that's the exciting thing about being a solo artist. It's kind of like I don't ever feel any pressure to do what I did the night before in the performance. Even if I look at the videotape, I can take those moments, and the only performances that tend to not work for me and tend to kind of flop in my mind are the ones where I try to replicate what I did with the performance
Right.
previous.
Totally.
So
That's the worst.
yeah.
Don't do that.
Don't do it. Just don't.
Can I ask a question to you?
Do it.
Like, what are there? Do you find that there are
Let me drink this.
Do it.
underlying, like, what concepts or philosophies or like life insights that are driving your work right now? Like, what makes you wake up in the morning and want to like make dance? And what?
Honestly, I don't think it's necessarily a desire to make it. I think sometimes it's something I feel like I have to do. I know that sounds really stupid, but it seems sometimes it's like I wish I was doing something else. But this is what it's like. If I wasn't doing this right now, I wouldn't feel fulfilled. And sometimes in making the work, I don't feel fulfilled either because of financial resources or whatever else that don't allow me to get to the point I want to get to with whatever piece. I think the solo work, it's easier for me to just instantly say that I'm making this piece, and this reminds me of my time in high school in Pittsburgh. This reminds me of this situation with this person, that person. Whereas with the group work, I think it's this weird, heady psychological thing where I'm making a work and I'm like, I have these ideas, these images, or even a title right away, and I start making it. And then maybe a month down the road, or after it's been performed and I've looked at the tape, I'm like, oh, okay, that's what that was about. You know, that was this situation. And it's always current to what's going on in my life. I mean, I've had people I've dated at a time tell me that I wasn't over the person I was dating before it, but I'm like, what are you talking about? You know, it's just a dance. You know? But it, you know, and I think it's interesting because I am influenced by Merce. I love Merce Cunningham, and I don't think he would